Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today's video, we're going to be exposing how fast fashion brands like Zara, like H&M, like Shein are tricking you into buying more whilst telling you that their clothes are more affordable than others. So in my headlines video I did really recently, I spoke about clothing poverty in the UK and how a few brands are trying to fix that. One of the brands I mentioned is Sharewear, and when I was researching this video, I came across an interview with the founder that really explained this whole issue in another light, and I think could be really interesting to talk about. The founder of Sharewear, Louise Cook, spoke about how fast fashion is perpetuating clothing poverty rather than offering a solution, and how buying from brands like Zara or Primark is creating a false economy. And I want to explain what she means here. When she says clothing poverty is perpetuated by fast fashion, she's talking about how the poor quality of clothing from brands like H&M means that we often have to buy more clothing more frequently. Although when you're shopping at Primark or online at places like Shein, you might be tempted by the low prices available, we're often not thinking about how long that clothing will last and how long it might be until we need to replace it again. Over time, people are actually spending more because they continually have to replace that fast fashion with new items, whether that's because they're stuck in a trend cycle or because that clothing is literally falling off at the seams. But this isn't obviously factored into the initial cost of shopping fast fashion, so we don't take it into account when we're loading our baskets. Do you remember a little while ago there was a woman who did a TikTok counting up how much she'd spent at, I think it was Shein, over the past few years, and it was a crazy amount. I said it then and I'll say it again now, I think this should become the new internet trend. If people understood how much they were spending at these fast fashion stores cumulatively rather than looking at isolated incidents of spending, they would understand that fast fashion is not that affordable and that they are dropping money that they then argue would be too much to spend at a sustainable fashion store. I mean, I can't remember the figures off the top of my head, but I know that in a video I did recently, there was a comment section on TikTok speaking about how people had done a £90 Shein haul or even like a £300 Shein haul. Imagine spending that on items that are actually good quality. I'm not even talking about that much more expensive, but that budget on clothing that you've actually thought about and you actually know fits your personal style and will therefore last much longer. I really don't think we will be having these same issues. Now, I always get one or two people, mostly on TikTok, talking about how their Shein clothing has lasted a really long time, like they've owned stuff for years. And I completely agree that one or two pieces may be like this, but you can't argue with the facts here. And the fact is that we are wearing our clothes less and we are throwing them out more and more frequently. Whether this is to do with our trend cycle or whether this is to do with our poor quality clothing, fast fashion is not helping the issue. And I think the argument that fast fashion is accessible for those in need does not take into account the end of life and how often you have to replace these clothes. Everyone should be able to access quality clothing at any budget. And I'm not necessarily saying that luxury fashion is that much better quality either. I mean, I'm not an expert when it comes to clothing quality, especially with online shopping. But there's been a few debates online recently, and some influencers that I trust have spoken about how price does not necessarily mean quality, and there are things you need to look out for instead. The other thing we don't talk about is how fast fashion doesn't actually make us feel good. We may be doing constant hauls online, but a lot of us don't like what we have in our wardrobes. And so we go back out and we shop more because we think that the next haul might bring us what we're looking for. But it just isn't true. I know that I experienced this a lot when I used to shop fast fashion all the time a few years ago. And even now, I don't really trust myself to go into fast fashion stores because I get brought in by the allure of what it looks like in the shop. And then when I get home, I have a massive wave of disappointment. Fast fashion and ultra fast fashion is force feeding crappy quality clothes down our throat and profiting from it. And we're being lulled into a false sense of complacency, which doesn't allow us to question why none of us like our clothes anymore. I spoke about this in my other video talking about if the fashion industry is headed for collapse. And literally yesterday when I was thinking about filming this video, I saw a tweet that was talking about how no one likes what's in their wardrobe. I mean, when did it become commonplace for no one to like what they're wearing, for no one to like what fashion has to offer? I think we don't really understand the scale of the false economy of fast fashion. I mean, I spoke about how clothing poverty has shot up in recent years in my headline video, but the amount of people buying fast fashion and are therefore potentially stuck in this false economy is a much wider issue. I mean, it's pretty much commonplace nowadays for people to shop at Zara, H&M, because there's not many well-known alternatives. Fast fashion is our reality now. And if more people understood how fast fashion brands are trapping us in this perpetual cycle of disappointment and bad quality clothing, then we could really make a difference not only to the planet, but to the quality of our wardrobes and our happiness when it comes to clothing. But maybe it's that people see shopping at Shein as a kind of status symbol now. I mean, the original content creator of that Shein hiii video seemed proud almost in the comment section. She didn't seem ashamed at all about the fact that she bought a bunch of clothing and didn't like it 10 minutes later. And I think if that's how people are reacting to spending so much money on cheap quality clothing they don't like, then a mindset shift is the only thing that's going to work. All the legislation and all of the change from fashion brands in the world can't stop us if we don't understand that our own consumption of fast fashion is an issue, on this scale at least. I think no matter what side of the debate you sit on about whether fast fashion is good, about whether it is accessible or not, we can all agree that the ones profiting from this mindset is fast fashion. The argument that fast fashion grants accessibility is more of a distraction tactic than anything else. From fast fashion, who want us to be satisfied with the crappy quality of their clothing so that they continue to profit in a system that benefits them and doesn't require any change from them. One thing I think is interesting is that clothing poverty exists on both sides of the supply chain. For one, you have the global north consumer who is continually buying fast fashion clothing, wearing it out, throwing it away and replacing it. And on the other, you have the garment workers who are responsible for making that clothing, who brands don't pay a living wage, who are forced to work day in, day out to meet quotas that are unrealistic just to put food on the table. I think if people really sat down to think about how fast fashion treats us and treats other people around the world and treats our planet, then we wouldn't be shopping from it anymore. But maybe it is just easier to distract ourselves with cheap quality clothing in our wardrobes. One other thing I want to mention from that interview with Shareware's CEO is a solution she came up with, which I think is really interesting. You guys know I'm all about legislation on this channel and getting governments to do the work for us to force brands to comply. And she spoke about how with the help of legislation that stops brands from burning or offloading their old clothes onto charity stores, brands would be forced to seek alternative solutions, such as partnering with free clothing providers to redistribute the clothing they no longer want. By doing this, it would break the cycle of clothing poverty for a lot of us who depend on fast fashion's low prices just to clothe ourselves. If people in need could get access to clothing for free on a wide scale, then the next time they come to buy something for themselves, they might feel empowered to get something better quality because they have more money or because they have more time to find those better garments. Another solution that is kind of slept on is personal style, and how when you know what you want from clothing, you're no longer dependent on fast fashion to tell you what's in style and what you should buy. And there's a couple of YouTubers I really like to watch when it comes to developing your personal style. So I'll link those below, and definitely link anyone you like in the comments below too. I think a lot of us simply just don't know what good quality clothing feels like or looks like these days. And why would we? We've had fast fashion shoved down our throats for years now. I, for one, don't think I could identify good quality clothing in a blind test, and certainly not if I didn't put a lot of energy and thought into it, which isn't a luxury everyone has. I'm gonna pop some names of people that I respect, that I go to for opinions on good quality clothing on the screen, and I'd love if you guys could share other influencers that you look to for this list too, so we can have a bit of a resource and something useful comes out of this debate. One thing I want to add on is that if you are on the other side of this debate and you shop a lot of fast fashion and you still think that it's very affordable, one way to prove this is to do a wardrobe challenge where you stop buying stuff and you see how much money you save. I mean, obviously you wouldn't be buying anything, you wouldn't be replacing that fast fashion with anything else, but it could be a really good way to understand how much exactly you're spending on clothing, and an especially really good place to start if you don't like the clothing in your wardrobe right now. So you could literally quantify how satisfied you are with your wardrobe with how much you're spending on it on a monthly basis. You could do this for 3 months or however long you want really, but I know there are wardrobe challenges that do this time frame because it's quite easy to follow and you obviously have a community there to pull you along. And I think people would be surprised at how much they are spending and how much they've saved once they get to the finish line. And maybe that will change your mind. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let's not make this an argument. Let's have a discussion. And I will speak to you really, really soon. Have a lovely day. Bye.